When you're an innovative business, every blank page is an opportunity. What will you do with it? Will you make something better or create something new? Dell's Technologies Advisors provide you with the tools and expertise to do incredible things because we believe there's an innovator in all of us. To do more with smart tech, find your Dell Technologies Advisor at dell.co.uk/smallbiz. It's the week ending Saturday, the 16th of July, and this is The Week Unwrapped. In the past 7 days, we've seen Sri Lankan protesters storming the Prime Minister's office and presidential palace, Rishi Sunak emerging as the front-runner to lead the Conservative Party, and Novak Djokovic winning his 21st Grand Slam title at Wimbledon. But we're here to bring you some stories that passed under the radar this week. Big news not making headlines right now, but with repercussions for all our lives. I'm Ollie Mann. Let's unwrap the week. And apologies that I have a slightly dodgy throat. You just interpret it that I'm being extra husky because we have some super sexy news for you. Joining me today from The Week magazine is Leif Arbuthnot. From Goal, Oranges at Halftime, its assistant editor Emma Smith. And at the end of the day, science writer for The Eye, it's Tom Chivers. Tom, you're up first. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
Did we learn that we won the war on worms?
Well, I'm hoping that I will live longer than the last guinea worm. That's one of my goals in life, and I think I have a good chance to succeed. So we have every indication of success, either within the next year or soon after, I think.
President Jimmy Carter speaking to Channel 4 News back in 2016. Tom, what was he talking about?
So, guinea worm disease is this horrible thing that used to affect millions of people worldwide. It's a really nasty thing that people catch from contaminated water. The worms get into their system and crawl through their joints, and you have to eventually draw a up to 3 foot long worm out of a blister in someone's legs or arms, and it's just horrible and debilitating and agonizing. And it's been this and it's one of the great success stories of our time that the number of recorded guinea worm cases has dropped from millions when I was a child, something like 3.5 million in 1986, down to 15 in 2021.
So what was the news this week?
The news this week was that we've learned that. The figures have come out and have been recorded, and Our World in Data, which is a marvellous website for just recording the sort of statistics of the world, did a big post on it showing this huge breakthrough. The numbers have been dropping steadily year by year, so it's not that this particular year was a gigantic step change. We haven't gone down from millions to 15 in a year, but it's over the last 40 years, and led actually by Jimmy Carter, who was the President of the United States.
I mean, that sounds like positive news, Leif. Let's pour a bucket of cynicism on it, though. It is hard to monitor, isn't it? Like many diseases around Africa, documentation about who's got what can be quite hard to keep a hold on.
Yeah, it is hard to monitor, but given how lethal the disease has been, and I think there's no need to get the bucket of water quite ready. I think where there is more kind of room for cynicism is in, quite how many other diseases are running rampant and how far we are from completely eradicating those. So, for instance, malaria, there was a kind of plan in 1955 that was established to eradicate malaria, and that was abandoned in 1969. Now we're back on the kind of trail trying to eradicate malaria completely, but it's a really difficult thing to do. What's really exciting, I think, about this guinea worm story is that it's essentially been eradicated almost without the use of vaccines. So it's been a kind of a grinding effort to spread awareness about how this disease spreads, and also, clean up the water sources for people that kind of cause this disease. So it's not been a sort of glamorous, campaign against it, getting jabs in arms. Quite the opposite. It's just been the result of lots of hard work by, many, many thousands of people, no doubt, and obviously led by Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, let's talk about that then, Emma, because this is a real success story for the Carter Center, isn't it? Presidential foundations can easily be written off as vanity projects sometimes, but it seems like Jimmy Carter has really achieved something here by just pushing at this one issue for a very long time.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Cars Foundation has been at the forefront of the attempt to educate about clean drinking water in these countries, provide water filters, larvicides, education, even to the extent that the Carter was central in negotiations of a 4-month ceasefire in the Sudanese civil war, which allowed humanitarian workers in to provide aid and education, which has reduced the numbers of people suffering from this horrendous disease. So certainly, while we can sometimes be a little bit cynical in the news about, these big sort of Western white savior sort of organisations led by big, former politicians, big names, this is a real example of a success story, as Tom says.
Although that education that Emma refers to there, Tom, I mean, some of the educational message is presumably quite simple. It's things like, if you have a blister caused by a guinea worm, don't try and soothe the blister by putting your arm in water, because then you're going to end up infiltrating the water with the disease. I mean, it is that basic, isn't it, in some cases?
In some cases, yeah. I mean, one point about guinea worm is that in some ways it's a relatively easy disease to eradicate. If the pond full of guinea worm larvae dries up, then that's the end of the guinea worm in that area until it's brought back from somewhere else. It's mainly only in humans, but except for there are some cases in dogs, but which makes it, if the disease is spreading around bats in the area or something as well, it's much harder to eradicate. So there are reasons why guinea worm's been easier than some to eradicate. And I will say, I get the sensitivity, like Emma mentioned, around a sort of white saviour thing of people coming in, but this eradication has been heavily led by local people, village volunteers, elders in the village going and saying, learning about water filters and handing out water filters and larvicides for the, drugs to kill the larvae of these things in the waters, and yes, making sure that people know that this is how the disease spreads. So it is very much communities doing it for themselves with tools given to them by rich Western philanthropic organisations, which is probably the way you ideally want it. And it's been extraordinarily successful.
You do wonder, though, don't you, Leif, like if this had been a disease that only affected people in Europe and the United States, whether we'd be waiting till 2022 to reach this outcome.
I think that's a very fair point, and I think COVID was a good example of what it can look like when a disease comes and really troubles Westerners, particularly ones with high obesity rates and old age.
Yeah, we specialise in both those things.
we do. We're very good at producing that sort of person. I think that if this was a disease that was dominant in the West, this would be a very different story.
It's also just so gross, isn't it, Emma, when you see the video of these poor children that are blighted with this disease, like seeing a worm come out of someone's foot. It's actually difficult to watch. I can't really think of, even terrible terminal diseases that we have in the UK, like cancer. You don't tend to see images that are that vivid of something really horrible happening to someone.
Yeah, until Tom's recommended we cover this article for this week, I hadn't actually heard of guinea worm disease, and so obviously I had to do research and look into the disease, and watching some of the YouTube videos and sort of the clips of these often young children being treated for this horrendous disease. It is quite harrowing. To give people, I'm aware that people might be listening to this while they're having breakfast or whatever, but the fact is that the only way to treat guinea worm is to allow it the worms, the parasites, to grow to full size, as Tom says, and they can grow up to be, meters in length, or feet in 3-4 feet in length, and then to pull them out through a blister, using a piece of wood over the course of a couple of weeks. It really is that hideous. And the fact is, we have talked, Leif mentioned about how the fact that it's been done without, a big vaccine drive, because the fact is the only way to stop guinea worm is to provide access to fresh drinking water, provide access to fresh, clean water. There was a stat which I read in research for this, which is that in 60s South India, up to 10% of adults reported being infected at least 10 times by the disease because they just had no other source of water but one that was infected by these worms, and they kept on going back to it. And the fact is, it is a truly hideous disease. And the fact that it's now been almost eradicated, at least according to the stats that we have, it's something to be celebrated, because it is one of the most horrendous diseases that I've ever read about.
And is that scientifically right, Tom, that the only way to treat it is like this? There is no hope to develop a drug or a vaccine?
Well, there's no As far as I'm aware, there's no vaccine for it. Certainly, I mean there are drugs that kill like intestinal worms and things, but it seems one would imagine that cleverer people than me would have thought to use them if they worked. So I will say I totally get the skepticism about monitoring stats, but I think they're probably pretty reliable for two reasons. One, the Carter Foundation and others have provided active monitoring of it, so you're going into countries and checking. They declare that they won't, the Democratic Republic of Congo, for instance, is one country where they say we don't know, there isn't enough monitoring here to be sure of it, so they don't declare that free of guinea worm. But when they do declare a country free of guinea worm, it has to have had no cases for 3 consecutive years.
But if they can't, if that is a chink in the armour, if they cannot say that the DRC is free of guinea worm, then how can all of Africa be said to be free of it? I mean,
well, I think DRC isn't somewhere they worry particularly as a major hive. It is one of the places on the edges of the sort of at-risk zones, but it's Chad and Sudan are the real places where numbers are still real. It's still small, 15 between the two of them. Basically, my point is the monitoring, with a lot of diseases, the monitoring is really shaky in large parts, especially of sub-Saharan Africa, and in parts of Southeast Asia, you get these sort of gaps in the monitoring. But actually for guinea worm, it's pretty good. It's quite a hard disease to misdiagnose, and there's been people really investing in active monitoring for it, like saying, we will concentrate on this one specific thing and get it done, and then once it's done, we'll concentrate on something else. So I'm relatively confident in the statistics, which isn't something I say very often.
No, let's bag that up and keep it. Some positive news. Leaf, you're up next after this. When you're an innovative business, every blank page is an opportunity. What will you do with it? Will you make something better or create something new? Dell's Technologies Advisors provide you with the tools and expertise to do incredible things, because we believe there's an innovator in all of us. To do more with smart tech, find your Dell Technologies Advisor at dell.co.uk/smallbiz. OK, now just a heads up before we move on to the next story, we're going to be discussing sexual harassment and sexual assault in this section. So content warning, if that's something you're not comfortable listening to, then do skip through to the next story in 10 minutes' time. Leaf, what do you think this week should be remembered for?
The dangers of getting a massage at home.
I literally just froze. I pretty much let him carry on. It was probably only a couple of minutes or whatever. But in my head, it was like hours. I have no idea how to react, because every inch of me wanted to get up and hit him and yell at him and push him out my flat. But I had no idea what this person was capable of. I'm in my flat alone, and I was so scared that if I told him to stop or reacted or did anything, maybe he'd go further and try and rape me.
BBC Radio 4's File on 4 on Tuesday. Leaf, what's the story?
It's a pretty remarkable investigation by the BBC show into what seems to be a kind of growing trend of women who are getting massages at home, often booking through apps that have become extremely popular. And then when they've invited a massage therapist into their home, they are being sexually assaulted. It's very hard to put a scale on this problem for reasons that I could get into, but which are quite technical and boring. But it's just the testimony in this Radio 4 programme is pretty harrowing about women who, partly because of the slick way in which you can book these massages and the ratings that other users of the massage therapist give, which give this kind of patina of safety, invite these people into their home and then and have a pretty horrendous experience.
So what was the most shocking part of this documentary for you?
For me, it was the testimony of a woman who had been sexually assaulted in her own home and then reported this incident to the police, and also I think to the people who were behind the app that she booked her massage through. But even after she'd done that, she could, when she was cruising, kind of checking the app to see if this man was still on there after she'd reported him, she found that he still was. And it's just one of those things where the app people kept saying, oh, there's a sort of technical glitch. But, it was pretty chilling to know that if there's a sort of predator out there, that there are really big gaps in the way that these tech companies seem to be dealing with these kind of bad faith actors. And I know this is a rather more personal take on it, but like, a lot of my friends have taken up these massage apps in like the recent years because it's so much less of a faff than going to a massage, a parlour yourself. And so
have I, and it's the same price as well. That's the other thing. You're paying the same, and it's in your own home.
Totally, and people often bring, the massage mat with them. So you really have to do nothing at all. And my grandma, who's 102, even gets massages at home once a week. It's just a sense of we need way more investigation into how kind of widespread a problem this is, but also we need to look at tightening up the regulation, because in this country it is really horrendously loose, and I didn't know that before I listened to the programme. You'd kind of think that if you're getting a massage from someone, they've kind of had to go through some official training and they're signed up to some professional body, but they're not at all, it turns out.
But they're not. It's not a dissimilar situation, is it, to the likes of Uber and Airbnb from that point of view? Anyone can say that they want to do it. I mean, Emma, it is unregulated and people don't know that. And as we've just discussed, it's a growing trend. That's a bad combination of factors, isn't it?
Yeah. There was one. There was a case that was in this documentary of a man who was jailed for 3 years after sexually assaulting 4 women while giving them massages. He had no formal training, but was able to sort of advertise his work through Facebook Marketplace, unregulated, no control, sort of like able to basically prey on these vulnerable women. The fact is that under UK regulations, massage therapists don't need a license or training to practice or to call themselves a therapist. It's not a protected title. It's an industry which I didn't know much about until it was flagged as a potential story for this week, and I was genuinely shocked by how little regulation, how little control there is. And I mean, like the BBC report says that they contacted several government departments over who was responsible for this industry, and said that they were met with confusion and people sort of pointing them in different directions. And as long as sort of this service is unregulated, it is a little bit scaremongering to say, oh, you could be allowing any man into your home. But the fact is, if this industry is as unregulated as it is, it's going to allow predators to thrive, quite frankly.
Would you think twice, Leaf, before booking a man through an app to come and give you a massage, regardless of their ratings?
You know what? I think I would. I don't think that most men are predators, and I'm sure there are obviously loads of brilliant masseurs who, the vast majority of them won't cause danger to me. But I don't know. I think, and actually, there's something quite attractive about the idea of being massaged by someone who is likely to be physically quite a lot stronger than me, because if you've got a knotty back, you want someone who's really powerful to get those knots out. But I think there's you have to think about basic power imbalances when you're inviting someone into your home, and I think it's basic good practice to not put yourself in danger. And especially after listening to this program, I think I would definitely really have pause before doing that. But I don't want to tar all male massage artists with that brush. It seems really unfair. It's not a kind of man versus woman problem. But personally, I probably would think twice, if I'm being perfectly honest. I
mean, actually, you wouldn't want to overstate this problem. It clearly is a terrible problem. I know it's great that Radio 4 have done this documentary. But at the same time, Emma, I mean, I've interviewed massage therapists before about their job. I would imagine, without any evidence to back this up, but anecdotally, I would imagine it's probably more common that female massage therapists go and visit in their home, attempt to sexually harass the therapist. It's the man in that power imbalance who's then often pretty much naked on their table and is likely to suggest that the massage should lead on to something else. I imagine that happens as often as this. And there's equally no regulation, no safeguarding for the people who are putting themselves forward as therapists, their patients and client. It's not just their clients who are at risk.
Yeah, it's very much an industry which is entirely based on, client and client relationships. And if you're and working in that situation, it's similar, I suppose, to being like a home, it to being a cleaner, a freelance cleaner, if you like. If you have to go into people's homes, people's lives, and work, and I mean, it can, and you're entirely at the mercy of whether or not that's a good client. It certainly is, and it's. I mean, previously massage therapists would have sort of the protection of working from a premises, and most councils in the UK require these massage premises to carry a business license. And there is there's the protection from that. There's some sort of level of official protection, and professional distance. But now that more and more, it's now more and more happening in the more personal confines of people's homes, that sort of professional distance is going to is likely to get narrowed, and particularly people being booked off apps sort of more casually. That professional relationship is going to get narrowed, and it only takes a person to misinterpret that and cross the line, and then all of a sudden you've got a big problem. Both whether that is for the masseuse or the client.
I'll just jump in and talk about something. This is just something that I think about a lot, and actually was something I wrote about in my last book, which I wish stories like this would give more numbers. I know it's really hard with this, because a lot of we don't know how many assault cases there actually are, and they've only found they're just reporting on the ones they found. But numbers like how many people use these apps, how many people, how many at-home massages there are, how many people who are at-home give these at-home massages, because the point surely of journalism is to help people navigate the world, right? To understand the risks and things they face in the world. And without numbers of, so if it really makes a difference to the story if there are these 12, however many assaults, and they're out of 1,000 massage therapists worldwide, countrywide, or if it's out of 100,000, what your personal risk is totally transformed by what the denominator is of that equation. And without it, I don't know how people can use it to decide for themselves whether an at-home massage is a risk they're willing to take. Because, I mean, obviously, you guys were all saying having these at-home massages is really convenient. It's nicer than going in somewhere else. It's the same price. There's all these advantages, and it opens it up to people who might be bed-bound or homebound or not less willing to go into these other places. It's this obvious advantage for people, these obvious positives, but there's this risk. Our lives have risks. We have to decide how much risk we're willing to take, and we can only do that with some sense of what the actual numbers are. And if you just don't give the denominator, if you just don't say there are this many, this many at-home massages are given, there are this many, users of these apps, whatever, then it's just a scary thing happens sometimes. Do with that what you will.
Just finally on this, I'd like to talk about that issue that you raised about ratings and reviews, because, ever since, I guess, the creation of Amazon, really, we've all got used to the idea that one of the benefits of user-generated content and other people that are accessing apps and services being able to write about their experiences is that there is a huge amount of trust that is put in those ratings and reviews. How can it have been the case, Leif, that not only was a massage therapist that was accused of sexual harassment was still advertising on the service, but that he appeared to have amazing 5-star reviews? People are obviously going to use those to make a decision.
Yeah, I think they will, and it seems that in some cases the kind of the therapists that went rogue weren't assaulting all of their customers. They were doing it to probably some, and so they were able to harvest positive ratings from people who'd had a very anodyne experience, and then presumably the women who had been assaulted didn't give them a rating at all. So the program didn't dig into whether those ratings might have been confected. I wouldn't be surprised. People go to all sorts of measures to commit crimes, and confecting reviews is no hard task. But it's pretty concerning because we even just buying some olive oil on Amazon or a sofa, we spend all our time scrolling and seeing what other people have said. So it shows that there is a danger in relying in acting too much upon what other people on the internet that you don't know have said about a service or a good that you're thinking of buying.
Indeed. Okay, Emma, you're up next after this. OK, Emma, you're finishing the show. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
This was the week a rogue copyright claim disrupted our chill.
Chill out beats there. I can feel myself concentrating on my studies harder as we speak, and simultaneously ordering myself a mojito. Lo-Fi Girl's YouTube channel there. Emma, who is Lo-Fi Girl?
So Lo-Fi Girl is one of the most popular channels on YouTube. It has more than 10 million subscribers, and it has its most popular output is a pair of streams, beats to relax and study to, and beats to chill and sleep to.
And people literally just have these on all day whilst they work in the background.
Absolutely, they have over 800 million combined views since the stream started. And basically, it's they play this relaxing sort of background music, as you heard in the clip there, and basically provide sort of a background for people to study to sleep to, and as a result are extremely popular.
Okay, so I'm obviously in the wrong business. What's happened this week?
So this week, YouTube had to apologise after these two extremely popular streams were both briefly taken down, both briefly struck down because of bogus copyright claims made against them, which highlighted, once again, the extremely backwards sort of and unintuitive processes that YouTube has when it comes to copyright claims made against videos on its channel.
So, Tom, how did we get to a stage where a copyright claim was made, and what led it to the point where the channel was temporarily suspended?
Okay, so another YouTube channel, apparently a Malaysian record label's YouTube channel, launched a copyright claim against them, and then YouTube just automatically took the thing down, and later said had been an abusive and deliberate use of the use of the copyright to assume to attack a competitor or something like that. It sort of reveals a problem with just, which is not just unique to YouTube, but with all the sort of idea of moderation of any major platform, which is that with user generated content, which is that basically you're going to have millions and millions and millions of people, 500 million people on Twitter, or how many millions of people on YouTube or TikTok or anything, who are producing content, and you've got a company which probably employs a few hundred people or a few thousand people, of which only a small number will be moderators, and you simply cannot make the numbers add up that you get a human looking at each copyright complaint or claim that there's abuse or racism or anything like that. There's just not the numbers to do it. You're going to have to use algorithmic content moderation to some degree, and the thing with humans and algorithms is they get things wrong, but it feels much more manageable if you deal with a human.
Yeah, but it's about the reaction when it gets things wrong, isn't it, Leaf? Like, if we were talking about child abuse imagery or something like that, then you'd understand why a company like YouTube, owned by Alphabet, would want to make a very, very quick decision, pull content, and then review it afterwards and decide whether they breached some terrible rule of taste and decency. When it's a copyright claim, I mean, you'd think that they could leave it up for another few hours whilst they investigate, rather than just immediately pulling it down. You're talking about a channel here with 10 million subscribers.
I know you think that they'd have some sort of algorithm that would, sort of pass big cases like this over to actual humans with a bit more refined judgment than the bots that seem to swarm in and kind of shut stuff down when there's a copyright claim that seems to have weight behind it that's filed. So yeah, I think there's definitely a problem here. I was reading that I'm not sure. This story is pretty murky, but it looks like that maybe this Malaysian record label might have been hacked anyway, and that the copyright claims may have been filed by hackers that gained access to this Malaysian record company's YouTube account. So it gives you a sense of quite how masked this kind of world of YouTube is. It's very easy to kind of it's basically hard to know exactly who is behind these claims, and it seems that perhaps the barrier to filing copyright claims it might be a little bit too low, at least because these bots seem to be quite so trigger happy in taking down content. A lot of people really like this this music channel, as you get a sense of that from the number of people who listen to it. But also it's quite a good study aid. So I feel slightly sorry for the people who maybe they were revising for some important test coming up, and then at the crucial moment, they found that they couldn't listen to this very soothing streaming sort of soundtrack in the background.
Yeah, I was amazing looking at the comments on Twitter, Emma, when Lo-Fi Girl posted that they were first off and then back on. The fans kind of piling in, being like, "Oh my God, I've got nothing to study to. You soothe my ADHD in the workplace. I wouldn't be able to concentrate without you." It can seem like a frivolous thing, providing a live stream on YouTube. It's something that people associate with gamers in particular, isn't it? But actually, there are obviously millions of people that are using YouTube in this way that perhaps isn't reflected that much in the mainstream media still.
Yeah, this could be seen as a bit of a joke story, particularly compared to the first two things that we've talked about on this podcast. One comment under the Lo-Fi Girl saying that they'd been struck down, which tickled me. Basically, for those who don't know, the audio for the stream is as we heard before. The imagery is of this girl drawn in sort of an anime style, studying for exams, and one person said, "Oh, she must be finally ready for exams." That's why the streams come down. But the fact is that it is an extremely popular channel. It is it provides solace and sort of background and help for a lot of people, and it is it's gone into sort of the mainstream. It has gone across into the mainstream consciousness during the COVID lockdown. Will Smith, the actor, his channel did a parody version. So the fact is, this is an extremely popular, respected, and relied upon channel that people go to for study aids, to care their ADHD, for all sorts of things. So for it to be struck down by a rogue copyright claim, whether by hackers or opportunists or whatever, it would have affected a lot of people, and it's certainly a big PR blow for YouTube, and does shine a light on how flawed their copyright claim system is.
And streaming is kind of the battleground now, isn't it? YouTube obviously rose to popularity when people's mobile data couldn't handle watching things live, but you now have the likes of TikTok and Twitch doing live video and sometimes eclipsing YouTube's ratings.
It's another situation that makes me feel a million years old, because maybe it's just me. I cannot work. I cannot concentrate. I can't sleep if I'm listening to things. It would completely render me incapable of doing any work whatsoever. So it's obviously, this works brilliantly for some people, but it led me. I was listening to it. It was perfectly nice. So I was thinking, what perfectly, sort of, it saves you having to find a more Chiba album to put on at a dinner party or something. You just let it play in the background. It led me down a bit of a rabbit hole of these other weird YouTube things that people have there's these ASMR videos of having people just whisper quietly in the background, and it's very strange to me that this is a whole sort of incredibly popular world of things that people spend hours listening to. So go to it, I guess. It's just not something I could easily get into.
There's also something quite retro about the idea of streaming, particularly because people are listening to this as music, and to me it sounds a little bit like listening to the radio. You don't have any control over what's coming up. You're tuning in because you kind of like the vibe of the music, and it just goes on and on and on. And that, to me sounds a lot like what the radio kind of is. So I think it's quite sweet.
Except there's now a community, isn't there? So what's different to radio? I mean, obviously you can tweet at the same time that you're listening to the radio, but what's special about listening to a live stream on YouTube is you can see who else is listening and talk to them.
Yeah, it's very true. And during the pandemic, of course, I spent like a lot of time on Instagram, tuning into streams of like my favourite musicians who kept giving free concerts. Like Ezra Furman was often she was giving guitar sort of free kind of songs out, and it was really moving just to feel like I was in her like living room. Ditto with Charlie XCX. So it's certainly a space into which artists who are ambitious and quite modern are like moving.
Emma, are you seeing any indication that YouTube were at all ruffled by the controversy over this? I mean, it's a big YouTube channel, but YouTube are bigger than Lo-Fi Girl.
Yes, so there's no indication that this is going to, necessarily force YouTube to make huge changes. It's a little bit embarrassing for them. But the fact is that it has shone a light on, the fact that YouTube has this extremely bizarre and unintuitive copyright system, and B, how other streaming services are sort of catching up. So on the first point, there is no way to appeal a copyright strike before a channel or video is taken down on YouTube. Lo-Fi Girl's entire channel was struck down in February 2020 before being reinstated. And it is a constant source of frustration for creators on YouTube. It's something that you often see complaining about in videos or on social media. And the fact is that you can make a copyright claim on YouTube fairly easily through their Content ID system. And according to a report by YouTube, there were 722 million claims made in the first half of 2021, which is frankly staggering. 3.6 million of these were disputed, and 2.2 million of them were ruled in favour of the uploader, which is around 60%, which does indicate that, which to me indicates two things. One is that most people simply, if they have a copyright claim against them made, will simply accept it. That's an extremely sort of small number of disputes, because the fact is a lot of these copyright claims may well have been made by record agencies, big organisations, but and you feel like you can't, like a lot of small channels will feel like they can't sort of fight that. But the fact is that if out of all those, like the 3.6 million disputed, the fact that more than half of them have been ruled in favour of the uploader, more than half of them have been sort of overturned on appeal, shows that it's a system which doesn't really work and is extremely open to sort of bogus claims, abusive claims, things like that. And I think that, to come back to my second point that I made, a lot of people are turning away from sort of like the fact is that TikTok is now ahead in terms of average watch time in terms of video channels. A lot of streamers are now going to places like Instagram, Twitch. The fact is, YouTube obviously is such a huge business and will remain such a huge business. But the fact is that this story does indicate that it has pretty significant issues when it comes to copyright.
Yes. Finally, Tom's already said that he can't listen to anything whilst he's working. Leaf, what do you listen to whilst you're filing copy?
Well, I like a lot of rap music, but that can be a bit distracting if I'm trying to write, because I don't want to be channeling the kind of rappers that I'm listening to. But generally, I don't listen to spoken word stuff when I'm working. I did go through a phase of listening to a lot of classical music, but that's kind of ended now.
What about you, Emma? Are you a Classic FM Scala girl?
I listen to back episodes of The Week Unwrapped, obviously.
Good one.
I do quite a lot of spoken word stuff. I listen to like football podcasts and sort of film podcasts and stuff like that. I do quite like sort of having that stuff on in the background, and and actually when I was studying for university, I did have sort of background music like this on. I didn't have Lo-Fi Girl, but I'm pretty sure I would have listened to it if I'd known about it when I was at uni. So yeah.
Well, the good news is that Lo-Fi Girl is back up now on YouTube, so you don't need to listen to this podcast whilst you're studying. But it is time to strike down this episode. Please do send all objections through to YouTube's Twitter account. My thanks to Leaf, Emma and Tom for their stories. You can follow this show for free and get every episode as soon as it's released by searching for The Week Unwrapped wherever you get your podcasts and tapping follow. Remember as well to check out our sister show from the week, The Overview. I've been Ollie Mann. Our music is by Tom Morby, the producer Sophie King at Rethink Audio. And until we meet again to unwrap next week, bye-bye.